Hello composers, Mike here. Are you ready to master the piano roll editor in Logic Pro X? Because in this video I will share with you 51 tips for improving your workflow in the piano roll editor of Logic Pro X. So let's get started right now. Alright, so here I am in Logic Pro X now, and I will now go through my entire list of 51 tips of using the piano roll editor in Logic Pro X so you can really master your workflow when working with MIDI here in the piano roll. So let's start right away with tip number 1, which is get a third tool. As you can see up here, I have 1, 2, and then a third tool. So how do you get this? And by the way, this is my setup. The left click tool is the ordinary pointer tool. Then I have here the pencil tool if I hold down command to draw in notes. And then I have velocity as the third tool, so I can right click. This is the right click tool. Right click with my mouse and drag up or down to change velocity on any note. So in order to set this up, you simply go to Logic Pro X, menu, preferences, general, and then editing, and then right mouse button is assignable to tool. When you choose that, you get it here, and you also have a different set in your sequencer, as you can see up here, so you can have a different set of 3 tools there. So that's one. Tip 2, the tool menu. Really learn how to use it. So, of course, these are your main tools, but to access the entire range of tools, you simply click T to access the tool menu. And my favorites here, I really recommend that you learn the key commands for your favorite tools that are not the 3 main tools. So T and I is the scissor. TT to get back to the tool anytime. TI, scissor, TT, TB for brush tool, and then TT again to get back. Tip 3, the velocity tool. So I have it here, as you already learned, as my third tool, but if you want to, you can use, for example, the scissor tool here, because you can actually get a temporary velocity tool by holding down command and control, and while hovering over a note, I can do the same as I just showed you when this was on velocity and right click. However, I personally use velocity so much when I edit that I rather have it as the right click tool, but it's up to you. Tip number 4, zoom. Well, one way is to, let's say you are like so, simply if your region is selected, when you go in, click Z and it zooms to fit the screen. Or you can also use, if you hold down the option key, you get the zoom tool here, and you can do like so, and then hold down option key, click anywhere outside, and it goes back. Sometimes if you are over a note, you can see the zoom tool is not there, even though I press the option, well, add control, option and control key, and then wherever you are, you can see the zoom tool, like so, and then back. That's tip number 4. Then 5, access the quick menu, which is control and then left click anywhere outside of any note. So if I left click here, you get this mini menu here, which has a couple of options. You might want to, for example, create a note or whatever. Then you have number 6, which is the edit menu. So this is the quick menu. If you want to edit a note or do something, control and then click the note. You get this menu. By the way, I think this is accessible via right click. However, since I have chosen a third tool, you need to use control and then left click on it to get this menu here, the editing menu. Tip number 7, repeat selected. So let's say you are creating an ostinato rhythm or any type that repeats. So let's say we have a note up here, right? So if you use the key command, Command R, it will replicate this. Tip number 8 is global tracks, because you can actually access the global tracks here in the piano roll. Just press G to open up the global tracks. I have used the marker track and the arrangement track, which means I can actually see my markers where I have written down my chord progression, actually, which is another tip, I guess, inside this tip. And I also want to see my arrangement track to know what is this section. Right, so that's it. then you can also do this for only the marker track by the single quotation mark, I think it is. So this brings up only the marker track, G, all the global tracks which you can add to here. Tip number 10, show automation. A brings up the lane here. And then tip number 11, toggle automation lanes, which is, let's say, Command and Y, which goes through all the automation you have actually recorded. In this case, I only have note velocity, but let's say I have added expression here, like so. Now I can toggle between the used automation, which are these used here by Command Y. It toggles between all of them. In this case, only 2, but you get the picture. So then A again to close. Then tip number 12, which is multi-editing, view by region colors. So let's say you edit this, select this clip, and then select this clip, and then click E, open up the piano roll to show both clips at the same time. Well, it's hard to see which clip is which here in the piano roll editor. You simply Control left click anywhere here to bring up the quick menu, and then you choose region colors and watch. Now you can see the notes have the colors for this corresponding region, the purple and yellow here, which makes it easier to distinguish when multi-editing. Control left click and go back to velocity when you want to adjust the velocities. So tip 13 is multi-editing, view single region. So again, we have this. Now let's say you want to watch only these notes. You can simply double click on any of these yellow notes here. It does also work in this mode, but basically double click and you see all the notes of that specific region, even though both are still selected. So if you do this, both selected, and then double click that, then double click in the empty area to get back, double click this to only watch that region temporarily, double click here again outside, and you see everything again. Tip 14, toggle collapse mode. So first of all, you can simply click this button here. And by the way, what does the collapse mode do? Well, basically, it will only show all the notes that are used. So let's say these notes up here are not used. Well, those will not show. So it condenses the view, so to speak, like so. And another advantage is just that you see more clearly every note name here, as you can see. And then you can go back. I personally have this set up as a custom key command, so you can do this if you want to access it often and toggle between. Tip 15, toggle MIDI input, which is this button up here, which you can also assign to a custom key command. If you press this, you've activated MIDI input, which means you can now step record, meaning even if you do not press record, you simply hit a key on your MIDI keyboard, like here. You see? Let me in fact do that an octave higher so you can see it. You can see it now on screen. Right, so you get the velocity value automatically and of course the pitch of the note, but what about note length? That's when you use the step input keyboard, which is Option Command K, which opens up this menu here where you can assign what note value you are going to add. So let's say you activate 8 notes here and then you set the playhead here and make sure the piano roll is selected. Then you can just play the notes one at a time. So those are 8 notes and perhaps changing to quarter notes. Oh, you need to make sure the piano roll is selected like so, and then like so. And you can even play harmonies if you press 2 notes at the same time, or even chords like so. Tip 17, join notes, because sometimes you want, for example, if this is, let's say, strings here, then you might want to join these notes so they sustain the whole value. Simply select them, then Command J. Command J on these, Command J on these, and so on, until you're satisfied. Tip 18 is to split notes, which you use the Scissor tool for. So let's access the Scissor tool first. T and I in the tool menu, remember? So now we have the Scissor tool, and then you simply hover over a note where you want to split it, right so. Or you can split several notes by, if you select here and then drag downwards, the right side of this box will be the split. So let's split it there at the half bar value, and now all notes are split that way. Tip 19, is to multi-split notes. So I recommend that you first select the notes you want to multi-split, like this chord, into several split chords. Well, then after you selected, T-I to get the scissor tool, and then you hover over here, all notes are selected, and hold down the Option key here. Let's say we are splitting it into quarter notes. Option key, while hovering over, look what happens. Bam! It split all these notes at the grid I selected. I can do this at, let's say, 8th notes, like so. Super valuable, in my opinion. Tip 20. Duplicate notes. This you will do often, and it's simply a matter of selecting the note, hold down the Option key and left click and drag around, and that is now a duplicate note of the same velocity and length, so you can position it wherever you want. Tip number 21, see note names. This is super practical, and I'll actually have this in my template as default view, and then you have note labels, and look, you can see C4, A3, also the velocity value, in fact. That's super practical in my opinion, because you might find it difficult to see what notes is this, follow here, and to the piano roll there. Tip 22, nudge notes. And this you do by selecting a note, then Option key and left and right arrow keys. You can see, if I zoom in first, you can see that it actually moves ever so slightly. And how much this moves is dependent on the nudge value you have. So that is something you can set up. For example, in the secondary toolbar here, nudge value, it's now in ticks. You can have it in, for example, let's say beats. Let's keep that up so you can change it to beat, which means I can now you do this Option nudge left, which nudges it in an entire beat, or perhaps in division, which is 16ths in this case, as you can see. But sometimes you just want to adjust it for timing purposes. I usually have this at 10 ticks for that reason. So let's close that for now. Tip 23, mute notes. You can actually mute individual notes or several notes by simply selecting and then Control M to mute that, mute that, mute that, and so on, temporarily, or leave it if you want to. Then tip 24 is temporarily disable snapping. I often have snapping on, snap to grid, which means that Logic will snap to the grid, as you can see. But if you left click and then hold down Control and Shift, now I can drag without it snapping, as you can see. Tip 25, zoom to fit. So basically, if I select this note and then click Z or Z, it zooms to fit the entire content. If I have nothing selected and click Z or Z, depending on where you live, it zooms the entire selected region to fit, which was both of these in this case, just that one, like so. So that's super practical for zooming. Tip 26, force legato. So let's say you have recorded these chords, and then when you change chords, yeah, you get a gap here. If you want to force them to tie together, you simply select those. This also works for individual melodies and stuff, just to make sure to close this gap. Then you simply Control and left click here and use one of these trim note end to following notes, force legato, as you can see. If I use this one, force legato for selected, and then I can use keep here. You see it remove those, but if I want for all of these to the next one, not only the selected, but actually to following notes, and then keep, it will drag it out completely. That gets us to tip number 27, which is remove overlap. So let's say this, you get an overlap when you play a melody, but you really don't want that. Same thing, Control left click, but then you have trim note to remove overlaps for selected, and voila, it reduces those. So just select the notes that are overlapping, Control left click, remove overlaps for selected, like so. Tip 28, show chord on selection. Super practical. If you have played in chords like this, simply select all notes and watch up here. A minor, A sus2, and this is great when writing down your chord progression on the markers or on the clips, for example, whatever you prefer, to keep it an overview of your chords that play throughout your composition. Tip 29, add or remove from selection. Simply this, if you browse around like so, but you can do this like if you have this note and you want to add that note, of course you can hold shift and click that, but you can also hold shift and then arrow key. As you can see, by the way, it might be hard when you have like chords, but on individual note lines it works better. Tip number 30, scroll in play. What this means is that if I play this sequence now, when you get here, it will simply move the screen with it. But if you want to have this gradually moving, you can simply use the scroll in play option, which is Control-click for quick menu here. Now when the playhead gets here, it will start to scroll in the middle of the screen. So if I play from here, watch what happens. As you can see, it scrolls by playing instead of like shifting screen, which is the usual way of scrolling. That's scroll in play. Tip 31, split notes at playhead, which is also another way you can use for splitting these notes, for example. Select all the notes and then you use Command T, like so. If you have the playhead here, now those are split at the playhead. Then you have tip 32, transpose notes, which is simply selecting a note, option, arrow up or down, or arrow up and down while holding option or shift. So option is one seminote at a time, option shift is octaves. Super practical for fast editing. Tip 33, make selected notes the same length. So this can be super practical if you want, if you, for example, have these like so, and this is like so, and you want to make all notes the same length, you simply hold down option and shift, and then you drag left click here and drag left or right. You can see those notes, every note becomes the same length. Super practical again. And you can do this also for velocity. So let's say you want all the velocity values here to be the same. Select all, use the velocity tool. That's why I love having it here, because then you can simply, again, hold down option and shift, right click for velocity tool, drag up or down, and you can see now every note is the same velocity level. So let's get back. And then tip 35, toggle note audition, which is basically when I click a note here or add a note, you hear the sound. It's this button, MIDI out. If you have not activated it, it's not sounding, because some people find it annoying to hear every time I click a note here. Or you use option O to, that's the key command. As you can see up here, it shifts on and off. Now let's go through some very important selection commands in the piano roll. So first of all, tip 36, select all, Command A. You will use that again and again. Tip 37, invert selection. So let's say you have selected these notes. Now you want to select the rest except for these. So simply Shift I to invert the selection. So this is also a command you will use often. Tip 38, browse through notes, which is select these notes and then arrow left or right to browse through the notes. Tip 39, which I already touched at, which is add to selection. So in this case, you can have, for example, this, and then you want to add these notes to the selection. Hold down Shift, arrow right, and you see those are added. Or if you want to add those, hold down Shift and left arrow. As you can see, it always starts with this. So if I now click the right arrow, it will add from here to the right, like so. Tip 40, select notes of the same pitch. So let's go back to the chords here. So if you want to select all the notes with this pitch, you can simply select this and then Shift E, which will select all notes, even if this continues throughout the entire region that you have selected. Or you can even use, just click on this note over here, but it might be easier depending on where you are at to just select and then Shift E if you are fast that way. Tip number 41 is select same note name. So in this case, same pitch, meaning exact position. This, for example, let's say that, but you want to select all note A, which is A2, A1 in this case. Well, then you use select same note name, which is Shift S. Voila, it selects all notes that are A. Here, here, and even up here. Tip 42, select same sub position. And I'm showing this in my percussion track here. So if I select, for example, this note here, which is the first note in the bar, and then I use Shift P, it selects all notes of the same sub position, meaning all notes starting at the exact bar line. Here you can see all those notes, all those notes. This is not selected, by the way, because in order for this to work, all notes have to be perfectly quantized 100% to the grid. So like so, and now I use Shift P, now that note is selected. So just make sure that all notes are quantized to the grid before you use this. Tip 43, select all following notes. So if you start, let's say here, instead of selecting everything, you want to select everything after that note, Shift F, select all following, or select all following of the same pitch. You simply use the same Shift F, but you add Control. So Control Shift F, all following on the same pitch. Tip 44 is select same articulation. So let's say you are using the articulation sets in Logic to add different articulations on different notes. So I've just added for this demonstration all notes as staccato, except these notes are now long articulation. But let's say you have used lots of different articulations, this can be even more useful. You simply select the note and then you want to select all of the same articulations, Shift D. As you can see, that is now added. You can add, let's say I change this to long as well. Now that is added. These two are longs. Well, simply select one of them and then Shift D. So that can be super useful as well. Then tip 45, select same color. So let's say you have this at 127 and this at 127. Those are main accents. For whatever reason, I show this. Obviously more useful on percussion, but anyway, now I can use Shift and C to select all notes that have the exact same velocity, basically, because that is the same color. So let's get back to that. Tip 46, select overlapped notes. So this means all the notes here in the region that has a note above them, overlapping them, so to speak. So Shift O, as you can see, basically the only notes that don't have any overlapping notes above them is the main line here above, these two here, and this first note here. So this can be useful for voice leading and splitting voices and so on. Tip 47, select all inside locators. So click C to bring up the locators. I have actually already made the cycle area here, so I can now select everything inside those. Basically, I can do it for the entire section and then only select the notes inside there, Shift L. And you see, it's selected every note in every region. Very good for multi-editing, in fact, that are inside these locators. Tip 48 is select muted notes. So let's say I mute that note, Control M, Control M, Control M, Control M, Control M on that. Now I want to get back. Well, you can use the same command, Control M and Control M, to get all back individually, or much easier, Shift M, which selects all the muted notes, and then Control M to get them back. Tip 49, trim notes to playhead, which is Command plus left bracket or Command plus right bracket. In this case, it's bad to have a Swedish keyboard because we don't have the bracket symbol, so I need to reassign, make a custom key command for this. But basically, let's say you have these notes like so, and now you want to trim them, or let's say they are starting slightly too late. You use the playhead, put it there, and then I need to go in here to check trim start to playhead. Watch what happens with the position here. Trim start to playhead. Voila, it drags it out to playhead, and then let's say I want to make them go to here. Put the playhead there again, trim note end to playhead, and voila. Tip 50, select top notes. So let's say you have this chord progression and you want to only select the top notes in the line here. Shift arrow up selects the top notes that is currently playing. It starts from here because there's no note above it that's playing, and then goes up here and so on. And then you can copy paste this into, for example, a violin if this here is like a full string patch. And this corresponding for the bottom note is shift arrow down, which is the bottom note currently playing, like so. So you can copy paste this into, for example, your bass line. Awesome, those were all my 51 tips, but now I have a final bonus for you, which is to make sure you will remember all these 51 tips. I have made it available as a quick reference guide for free on my website. So simply click the link in the video description to get the complete list right now. Subscribe now and watch a lot more videos on composing music, producing music, sound design, Logic Pro X and much more. I'll see you in the next video, my friends.